Hola, butt munches! Now the following video will contain an outline of Deborah Ellis's novel Parvana, so pay attention because you're either watching this video because you haven't read the damn book, or you actually have read it and you just want to recap before the term starts, which is fine. Now Parvana begins with an introduction to the titular character, Parvana, who is a 10-year-old girl who lives in Kabul, Afghanistan during the reign of the Taliban. Now, as you may or may not know, some qualities of the regime include banning females from receiving an education, enforcing women to wear concealing clothes, and forbidding women from even going outside without a male, or at the very least, a note from a male blood relative. Basically, females needed a permission slip. Now, Parvana accompanies her father to the Kabul market where he provides reading and writing services for customers that cannot read. Now, Parvana is also capable of translating and comments that she is one of the lucky ones since most of Afghanistan could not read or write. Now, the reason Parvana escorts her father to and from the market is because part of his leg was blown off by a landmine. Ouchie! As she returns home that night with her father, it is revealed that they live in an apartment building that has been bombed out and is half blown to rubble. Similarly, it is stated that bombs had been a part of Parvana's whole life. And so while this might seem shocking to us in our incredibly ignorant, sheltered lives, in the world of Parvana, it's not something that's too out of the ordinary. Now, at home, Parvana's routine job is to retrieve water from a tap outside their house, as this is their only form of access, and even then, the water has to be boiled before it can be consumed in order to purify it and remove the toxins and the bacteria from it, so it's safe to drink. Now, this is a job in which Parvana finds no enjoyment, and she even thinks about arguing with her mother about having to do this job, but ultimately she doesn't, because several years prior, before Parvana's recollection, the family's firstborn, Hussein, was killed by a landmine. And Parvana's mother often grieves for him when she's sorting through his old clothes, which in turn makes Parvana suck it up and do her daily duties. Now later, when the family is sharing a meal, armed men from the Taliban burst inward and detain Parvana's father on the grounds that he received an education in England, and thus they are threatened by the possibility that he would introduce foreign ideas into society and rebel against Taliban decree. Now, in response to this, he calls the Taliban soldiers illiterate thugs. Damn! Now, naturally, the family tries to stop the soldiers, but they are beaten and thrown aside. The father is taken, but as he is taken, he refers to Parvana as my Malali. This is a reference to a young girl who rallied Afghan soldiers to revolt against British invasion in 1880. And as such, she is a symbol of courage in the text, specifically feminine courage. Anyway, the father is taken and the family is left in shock. Wah. Parvana and her mother, whose name is revealed to be Fatana, attempt to go to the prison where her father is being kept to demand his release, but again, they are beaten and sent away. Now, when they return home, Fatana falls into a depressive state and she becomes very mute and isolated. Now, because Parvana has the best chance of not being caught outdoors, she is tasked with shopping for the family's groceries. But of course, when she gets to the market, inevitably, she is seen and chased by a Taliban soldier. She is caught and killed, and that is the end of the story. Ha! Just kidding. No, luckily she escapes. And luckier still, she runs into a Mrs. Weera, who just so happens to be a peer of Fatana's in the Afghan Women's Union. Mrs. Weera takes Parvana back home and starts to take charge around their small house in order to accommodate for Fatana's depressive state. And things start to look up. It is commented that Parvana sees Mrs. Weera as someone who could take charge, who could take some of the responsibility off her shoulders. Now, I just want to backtrack a second and explain something or draw your attention to something because it is something that's really important. Now, the father being detained is sad, yes, and in his absence, we are able to witness the very real suffering and the very real struggles of Afghan women when they are left alone and without a present male. Now, since having a male escort was the only way for women to be outdoors, the remaining family members, which consisted of a mother, 3 daughters, and an infant son, they faced the very real danger of being either trapped in their homes, unable to go out and buy food and make money, or going outside unescorted by a male and risk a beating, or worse. Life was made near impossible for women without a man around, and so when the only man was taken away, the family was left to resort to extreme measures. Now, this is reflected in a quote much later in the text spoken by Mrs. Weera, who says, "These are unusual times. They call for ordinary people to do unusual things just to get by." So that's something that's really important. I just wanted to make sure that that was clear, because if you're not getting the extent to which women were oppressed or are oppressed in the novel, then you can't fully appreciate the lengths to which Parvana goes to protect and provide for her family. So, Fatana and Mrs. Weir soon come up with the idea that Parvana should disguise herself as a boy so that she is able to walk freely outdoors and conduct all of the activities that Parvana's father would have done originally. Now, in order to sell this idea, it is suggested that Parvana should cut off all her hair. She wears Hussein's old clothes, which of course depresses Fatana because it reminds her of her deceased son, and she goes by the name Kasim. Now, Parvana is not forced into this. In fact, it is very clearly stated to her that it has to be your decision, and true to form, Parvana steps up, she sucks it up, and she commits to being turned into a boy. When she ventures outside, Parvana finds that she is able to easily move through the market unnoticed and purchase the family's groceries, and it is this success that feeds her new sense of responsibility in her newfound role. Now, soon after, she also decides that she will also continue her father's store in the market and provide reading and writing services for customers. Now, during her first day of work, Parvana is approached by a Taliban soldier. Now, naturally, she freaks out at first, but he simply wants her to read a letter for him. The letter was addressed to his deceased wife and written by his wife's aunt. Now, in the letter, the aunt expresses her love for the woman and her regret about not being able to attend her wedding, and she also wishes her a long, happy life with lots of little kitties. Hearing this causes the Taliban soldier to cry. Now, again, this is a really important moment in the text. It doesn't get a lot of explicit attention, so it's easy to miss it, but it's very important. Now, obviously, for the rest of the text, we have been encouraged to see the Taliban as nothing more than oppressive brutes who basically don't have any souls, yeah? This scene, however, it causes Parvana to see them in a different way. It is commented that, up until then, she had seen the Talibs only as men who beat women and arrested her father. Could they have feelings of sorrow like other human beings? Now, this demonstrates a widening of Parvana's perspective, and it also shows us that things may not be as black and white as we may have originally thought. Maybe not every Taliban soldier is being so willingly. Maybe there's more to it than that. After this, Parvana refers to the man simply as the Talib who missed his wife. Now, shortly after the soldier leaves, Parvana makes her first sale with another customer. She sells a shalwar kameez, and again, this builds her confidence about being a boy. Now, at home, things start to heat up. Fatana and Mrs. Weir begin to work on a magazine in which they write about life under Taliban oppression so that they can publish and distribute it in other countries to raise awareness and perhaps affect change. Parvana begins to take her siblings outdoors so they can enjoy the sunshine, and this also boosts the family's morale. Now, at the market, Parvana learns that a woman in a nearby home has been leaving gifts for Parvana on her blanket. Now, the woman is never seen, but she is located in a high window, and she begins to routinely throw little gifts out onto Parvana's blanket where she has set up her store in the market. Now, she hence becomes known as the Window Woman. On the same day, Parvana witnesses several boys running around in the market and playing until one of them stumbles and crashes onto her blanket. And upon closer inspection, Parvana realizes that the boy is not a boy at all, but a girl who was a former classmate of Parvana's before girls were banned from school. Dun dun dun! The girl's name is Shuzia, or Shazia, depending on how you pronounce it. I think I'm going to pronounce it Shazia. But like Parvana, Shazia uses a fake boy name in public, which is Shafiq. Now, they walk to Parvana's home together, where Parvana's family gives Shazia a warm welcome. Fatana and Mrs. Weir also reveal that they have been meeting and interviewing other women in order to write their stories for their magazine, and they intend to smuggle their writings into Pakistan for printing and then smuggle them back into Afghanistan for distribution. Now, the family also toys with the idea of starting a secret school for girls, which of course is a very dangerous idea, because if they get caught, it could mean execution. FML, mate. FML. Now, once at the market again, Shazia suggests an idea to Parvana to make more money and to make it quickly. Her plan involves digging up bones in a graveyard and then selling them to a bone broker. Now, Parvana doesn't like this idea, but she does it anyway, and they make tons of money, and they both agree to give their families only part of their earnings and not tell them what they're actually doing. Upon returning home, however, Parvana is so ashamed of what she has done that she confesses right away, much to the dismay of her family. Now, even though Parvana doesn't like bone digging, and the family dissuades her from continuing, Parvana reasons that she will do it only until she has enough money to buy a tray, because if she has a tray, then she will be able to move about the market freely and sell her items and be able to actively pursue business rather than sit on her blanket and wait for business to come to her. Once she has a tray, Parvana and Shazia stop bone digging and they start to move about the market freely. They follow a gathering crowd into a soccer stadium thinking that a game is about to start and that there will be lots of people there to sell their items to. It is quickly revealed that there is no soccer game, and the girls watch in horror as Taliban soldiers cut off the hands of convicted thieves and warn the entire stadium full of people not to steal. Now, a nice group of dudes try to shelter them from it, and they escort them back outside when it's all over, and they ask them to go home and remember better things. Bae. Now, due to her horror at what she's seen, Parvana takes a few days off work. How dare she, right? But she ends up returning quite promptly because she knows that her family is dependent on her. At the market, Shazia reveals that she is saving her money up so that she can flee to France. At first, Parvana is distressed by this plan because it means that Shazia would have to leave her family even though they're dependent on her. Now, similarly, Parvana starts to dream of escape for herself, and she often remembers being in school and wishes things could go back to the way they were, which was boring, but safe. It was a time when she was free. At home, Fatana, Mrs. Weera, and Parvana's older sister, Noria, have started a secret school for about a half dozen girls. A little later, it is also revealed that Noria has become engaged. What? When did that happen? As it turns out, the dude Noria is marrying is the son of one of the women in the Afghan Women's Union. They've never met, obviously, but the family plans to leave for Mazar, where the groom's family is, and get them married. Now, Parvana demands that she stay behind, if only to be there if and when her father should ever be released from prison. Fatana is reluctant, but ultimately she agrees when Mrs. Weera says that she'll stay with her also. Now, with the family gone, Parvana enjoys the quiet and alone time, but of course, inevitably, she misses them as well. One day at the market, Parvana is returning home, but is forced into a bombed-out building because of a severe storm. She ends up falling asleep, and when she wakes up, it is to the sound of a crying woman. The plot thickens! Now, the woman is clearly in distress and is not responsive to Parvana's comforting, so Parvana takes the girl home with her, and after she's cleaned up, we learn that the girl's name is Hama, and she fled Mazar after the Taliban went on a killing spree and executed her entire family. But wait, did she just say Mazar? As in the place where Parvana's whole family just went to marry Noria off to some dude? Ah! Now, naturally, Parvana is upset by this information. She falls into a depressive state, much like the one her mother did after her father was arrested and detained, and she begins to become obsessed with thoughts of her family being killed. All she could do was picture her mother, sisters, and brother dead in the streets of a strange city. Man, that is rough. Now, it is only when Shazia visits her and asks her to come back to the market that she does so. And when she returns home one day, she sees that two men are helping to escort her father back into their home. What? Papa Bear's home? Papa? The return of Parvana's father, however, it marks a return of Parvana's hope. As evidenced by the lines, Parvana was filled with hope, because one thing in her life had been repaired. She returns to work with newfound vigor and states, "I feel like I'm working for something now, and I'm working to get my family back." You go, girl. Parvana and her father resolve to go to the refugee camps outside Mazar because they believe it's likely that their family would be there. At the market, Parvana receives one last gift from the window woman, and she wants to give something back in return. So she decides to plant a flower in the spot that she would normally sit in the market so that the window woman would have something pretty to look at. You know, chocolate would have been nice, but, you know, flowers are pretty cool too. Finally, as Parvana and her father are boarding the back of a truck out of Kabul, Mrs. Weera shows Parvana the printed magazines that she had been working on with Fatana. She tells Parvana to tell her mother that what she did was very important and they need her for the next issue. You know, she could be dead, but evidently that doesn't mean that she still doesn't have work to do. Shazia also shows up and she tells Parvana to meet her in 20 years' time at the top of the Eiffel Tower. Parvana says, "All right, mate," and then she and her father depart. Now, as they are leaving in the truck, Parvana comments that the future stretched unknown down the road, and the final image is that of Mount Parvana in the distance, which is a mountain that Parvana's father felt that he had the right to name earlier in the text. Now, the final line of the story reads, "Mount Parvana, the snow on its peak, sparkling in the sun." Now, this image symbolizes the height and the beauty of Parvana's optimism in the quest to retrieve her family. And that is it, boys and girls. That is a pretty extensive summary of the novel Parvana, which is the first in a series, so if you want to find out what happens next, nothing is stopping you from reading the rest of the series. I hope this video helped. If you're one of my kids, then the next time I see you in class, randomly shout out the word butt tickle so that I know you watched this video. And just say it, don't actually do it, and don't tell anyone else. That was just the first random phrase that I could think of. But anyway, thanks for watching, guys, and I will catch you next time. See you later.